So let the recording start there. Okay. Hi and good morning everyone. So welcome to AWS Cloud Native MuleSoft Meetup group. So today we have the topic revolutionizing serverless computing with MuleSoft. So today we will be discussing about AWS serverless services offered by them, like AWS API Gateway and AWS Lambda, and we will also be looking at S3 AWS S3 service, and we will be looking at integration using all the three services. So we can move to the next slide. Before we start, we just introduce you to the organizers of our meetup group. So, myself, I am Shubham, and I'm working as a integration developer in Millennium. I'm a MuleSoft ambassador, and Robin is here with me. Robin, if you want to quickly introduce.
Yeah, sure. Hey everyone, so I'm Robin. I'm currently working as a senior engineer in Azure and I'm one of the MuleSoft mentors in MuleSoft community. Thank you.
Okay. So, Gagan, you can. Uh,
So hello everyone, I'm Gagan Verma. I'm also working as a senior engineer at Haston as a MuleSoft developer. Uh, so overall, I have 3+ experience with MuleSoft certifications and AWS. So let's get started with the uh, agenda for the today's meetup. Okay, so for today agenda, we will be start with the API gateway, how to configure and use the API gateway with AWS. Then we'll see the Lambda integration in the MuleSoft and how to uh, create a Lambda function. Uh, Going forward with S3 connector in the Mule 4 with the scope and components. Also, combining all three together, we will be showcasing an integration with the AWS API gateway, triggering Lambda, and then processing files in the S3, and discussing some real world examples with the demo. And then questions will be taken forward, uh, proceeding with the trivia, and then with the networking and wrapping up. So we'll start with the Lambda integration with S3. Okay, let me share the full screen. So we'll start with AWS Lambda. What is Lambda? And so basically, AWS is your cloud provider, and Lambda is one of the web services which AWS provides you. Uh, when it comes to API, uh, so AWS, yeah. So AWS Lambda, you don't have to worry about hosting, or you don't have to worry about billing for the your vCOS or your RAM or what you're utilizing. It gives you a small uh, window, basically time window, which cannot exceed up till 15 minutes of execution time. So you can process and you can use existing AWS services combined with Lambda to create an infrastructure within AWS itself. And it also helps you with different types of options to code it in Node, Python, Java, and many more. Let me just straight up take you to the AWS console only. Okay. Yeah. So here we have our AWS console. This is uh, and okay. So in Lambda, overall, this is the basic Lambda. So it basically lets you create functions, and you can either take it from an image blueprint or you can start from scratch. It lets you decide your runtime, in which runtime you want to. It supports plenty of it. Also, with the custom, you can use your Rust or Go, any other language too. There's one more thing which is important in Lambda is execution rules. So there's this we so in this session I'll also be cover the basic permissions for Lambda, because most of the time what happens is so once you get the access or request policy for Lambda, still you won't be able to run services within Lambda, because Lambda lets you trigger other existing services of AWS also. So in that you need a separate role policy which through which you can attach whatever services you're using in Lambda, or else you will get error while executing Lambda. uh, so this was AWS Lambda. uh, Moving forward for Amazon API gateway. So as we have API for in MuleSoft, we can also create APIs within AWS with API gateway, which you can use it as a trigger for your Lambda. So in Amazon API gateway, it lets you create WebSockets also with REST and HTTP, and you can also it does so comparing with the it does not give you the whole developer model for to creating an API and gateway, but it lets you create it from the top surface. Like you can have basically you need WebSockets, REST APIs to work with the following services. It's already showing. So you can choose your type, which one you are comfortable with, and then moving forward, you can build that API within gateway, and then use that as a trigger point to call it from outside AWS. Again, you can add routing policies. Also, you can secure it with authentications within AWS API gateway, and you can configure the throttling limits too. Okay. Okay, moving on to the S3 connector, Amazon S3 service. So for this service, we have also MuleSoft S3 connector, and overall, so S3 basically helps you with the simple storage service. So it's a cloud-based storage service hosted on AWS only, which can be accessed across different regions as well within the MuleSoft with the help of S3 connector. So there is a separate connector already, and it is available on MuleSoft Exchange. So you can import that, and with the help of that, there are plenty of operations listed within the S3 connector, uh, which we'll be covering in the demo slide. So yes, so far any initial questions or queries regarding any three services, let me know. Uh, okay, so today we basically what we will be looking at will be how to integrate AWS Lambda with MuleSoft. So this will be overall flow, which we will be I will be showcasing with a demo. So and with the real time use case also. So I'll tell the real time use case first, and then go for the demo. So basically, there are times when we have jobs or end system where we are not sure how much data we will be getting from the export job, and there is no consistency of file, which how big or how small the size can be. But you can directly so if you can process it directly at another server like with Lambda, then you can integrate it with MuleSoft, and then get the pre-processed file for your integration, and that would be a hassle free, because then you don't have to worry about the size. You don't have to also worry about scaling your cloud services, cloud up, for RAM in it. So basically, in this, so there would be a every 5-minute scheduler which will trigger the API gateway. Now API gateway is attached with AWS Lambda, which will be the starting trigger for the Lambda, and you can pass your content or any request details through gateway only, as a pass through, either with body, param, or headers, and that can be read within Lambda, customizing it however it is required, and then it can trigger your files and then get that, and it can process it as well. So for also, one more good thing about Lambda is the billing part. So you don't have to pay for the EC2 server or any other. You just pay for the uh, runtime, how much time you are running the Lambda. That's it. And it's a pay as you go service. Then with the Lambda only, we can shred the files, or you can check the integrity, because in export job, once the job is completed, you do get the SHA and the file hash, which you can check it for the integrity part. Once that is done, we can directly shred it and then put it into S3 bucket of however size we want, and then from the MuleSoft, we can directly add a connector which will either on put on create new object, or you can directly get object through MuleSoft and then process each file separately one by one, in a batch or in a synchronous flow, and then proceed forward with your desired processing and response with the data. So this will be the overall integration for today. Uh, so let me start with the API gateway, how to create your API within the gateway. Okay, moving forward to AWS API gateway. So here you will have your options to choose which one you want. In If you basically go to directly search for within AWS API gateway, once you will be landed on this page, you can create your new APIs here with whatever protocol you want. So uh, for this I have created both HTTP and a REST API. Uh, so if you go forward, it will basically ask you three details: define your API, and then configure the route stage on which you need to deploy your API, and that's it. So you can name anything. Routing part can be added later as well. By default, it will have a auto deploy state. So as soon as you make any changes within the configuration of the API, it will auto deploy. Or you can create a separate stage for it. Uh, Moving forward, so here we will be. So you can name it. Then your route will be here. So once you go to the route permission, you can create your route. Uh, I guess. Let me take you straight up one which I've built. So here you so in the route section, you can directly create your endpoints, whichever method you like, and then give it once you create your route, you can choose, so it was by default any. You can basically even put an authorization on it if you want to secure it and attach, and this part is basically how you want to integrate it with any other backend source. Like once you call, what should it trigger or what should it do? uh, so here you can choose existing integrations if you have. If not, you can create a new integration as well. So if you go on a manage integration, I have already created an integration. uh, so there are two ways to do it. So one is, within the API gateway, you can directly, while building your API, you can add an integration for any existing service within the AWS. So here you can see integration target. It can either a function or HTTP URI, private source, event bridge, or a queuing service. This you can either attach it straight from the API integration part, or you can do it from the respective services as well. Like from any services, if you have queuing, you can go on that queuing service, and from there you can also attach it the same API. So once you create your existing this function and give it a name, let me demo. It will ask you. So in this case, we want it for Lambda. So you need to choose your region, which function you want to attach. So we have only one function within the Lambda which I've created prior, and then it has a maximum timeout. And you can also set the payload type. So if you want, you can give it a static response as well, or you can directly, it will pass through if it gets whatever response from the Lambda. Once that is done, you can hit on create and it will create. So I have already created one, which is triggering straight up. If you see in the policy statement, it will invoke the function, Lambda function demo, and then on the endpoint, test. Same way you can do it for a REST protocol as well. In REST, you get to define it more better. So you can basically, if you go for REST API, uh, you can define your method request. You can also define integration request separately, and in this you need to provide it step by step, so it won't directly pass through. You need to define your query strings, headers, and your body, and then same thing you need to do it for an integration request. So it will move from client to method request to integration request. And same way, your response will also come from Lambda to integration and then method response. So it basically goes through four blocks. So that you need, that should be specified prior, or else you won't receive your response, the desired response.
Gagan, can you just click on hide this pop-up? Yeah. So can you also tell like if API gateway is a regional service or a global service?
It's a regional service, so you can you basically host it on one of your regions, but it will you can access it outside your it. So if you see the endpoints, these are regional endpoints only.
Okay, can you show us like the different regions and the ones in Asia specific?
So within Asia specific, you have different regions also. You can host it on whichever is your nearest region for latency. Uh,
Okay, for India, what is the reason here?
for India, you basically go for Mumbai region, and yes, mostly Mumbai region will work for India.
Okay.
But you can also use other regions as well. There is no issue with that. Okay, so in the API gateway, once you create, you will get your endpoint. Once you create it, so by default it will be set to default stage, which will auto deploy. Any changes occur, it will automatically deploy. And here, so if you come to the deploy stage, you will get your invocation URL, which you can use to trigger the API. You can see it has successfully deployed, and you can use this URL copy and whatever routes you have created to trigger. So let me take you to Lambda section. Now for Lambda, uh, so in Lambda, again this is mm, so you will be granted with this page. You have to create a function here. So to start with Lambda, first name your function however you like. Select a runtime. In my case, I'm going with Python. You can also select the archetype with the permission sets by default, and this part, which is more important. So if you see it, it will take you to already providing you IAM console, identity access management. In this, you basically need to give it a role. So if you see allowing services to access other services within the permission set. So you need to name your service, which will be for which you are creating the role, and then you can attach it. So now what it is doing exactly. So since your account has permission for accessing Lambda, but your Lambda is not having permission to access other resources within the AWS. So here you will attach those policies to your role set, which will be attached to Lambda. So suppose if I want to access now S3 with Lambda, I need to give that permission set here. Here. So without this, you won't be able to put anything, or you can read it, but you won't be able to put, or you won't be able to write anything to the S3 also. So any service you are using or integrating with Lambda, please make sure you attach that policies here. Once that is done, you can name your role, and then it will create the role. So I have already created a function. Uh, if So yes, so once you create a function, you will not see this part. You will just see a add trigger and add destination with a demo. So in this, there are total four parts. Your script, Lambda script, which will be in the code section. You can put your code here. Then there would be a trigger section and then a destination section. So in trigger section, basically how you want to start your Lambda, you can pick either it provides you by lots of services which you can start with. uh, Code commit, IoT, S3, SNS, and from extra services as well. You can pick. So in this, we will be using API gateway. So once you pick uh, API gateway, it will ask you whether you want to create a new or use an existing. Existing, you can directly attach your existing APIs. So in this, I have two separate API, HTTP and REST. So I'll go for the HTTP one. In deployment stage, by default, it will go for default, and security, you can either keep it open or create a JWT authorization. Once that is done, it will directly add. So here, if you go to the configuration, go to the trigger section, you can see all the trigger points. So there's one more thing. Once you add an API gateway, it will list out all the endpoints routers by default. So either you want to keep one or you want to keep all. So in this, I created two. There was get data and demo endpoint. So both will be triggering, but you can disable one if you want, or directly delete one. So this will be the starting point for your Lambda. Also, in okay, and then here will be your Lambda function, which you can code here. So it basically default Lambda starts with so once you create a Lambda, you will get to see only this function, def Lambda handler, event, and context. Event basically is your what triggers. So the whole thing will be the request from where it's getting triggered, and ARN and other informations will be in the event, and you have to return. So this would be your default script with return statement and with the function. If we come down on the Lambda section only, you have something called runtime settings, where you can either change it once you create your Lambda, and a layer. So layer is very important. So in Lambda, it won't understand how to install any packages or separate packages you want to import. So for that, there are two ways. Either you can go with default layer, which AWS already provides you. So if I go for layer, adding layer, you will see there are custom layers and AWS layers. So here you can see there are layers with the specific libraries inbuilt, like Panda or Lambda Insight extension. So the one wanted to use Panda for the data processing. So I took this. But suppose if you have an external library or package which is not here, then you need to go for a custom layer, and then you can attach it separately. But once you go for a custom layer, uh, you need to package your separate library from your local, and then make it a zip and upload it here. It will work with the wheel command. Uh, I don't have permissions. Okay, no issues for this. So once you attach your layer, then it can you can successfully use your functions and packages like Panda. Also request part. So these two you won't be able to access without attaching a layer. So let me just walk through with the script. uh, so in this, what we are doing is we want to read a specific file from a different source, and then process it within the Lambda, and put it back to S3. So in the API gateway, I will be passing the URL with as a query param only, from where I want to read it through API gateway via MuleSoft. So in the query string, here basically I'm calling the event function. gateway API, getting the query param, uh, printing that in the logs. I'll show you how to access the logs for Lambda as well. Getting the file, then also you, naming the file where it needs to be stored within the Lambda. Then mostly downloading. So here we are downloading in chunks because file size is very large. So basically you need to stream it. So that for what we are using Lambda. Uh, Also, one more thing needs to be put in care is once you configure your Lambda, if you go to the configuration section within general, you can see there's something called memory and storage. So make sure by default you will get 128 and 2512 this thing storage. You can extend it up till 10 GB for both memory and storage. It all and the maximum timeout for Lambda is 15. You cannot go beyond 15. So your function cannot run more than 15 minutes. uh, that's the limitation here, but you can you can get it done if you increase the memory. It will process it faster, and then uh, you can use it. Again, this part here you need to use the existing rules to access. Sorry. So I've already created rules which have access to the services which we will be using. Okay, the configuration part is done. Suppose the so why I'm focusing on configuration is, suppose if your file size is bigger and processing needs more memory, it will error out the function and the process will not be call out. So make sure you provide a required amount of memory while processing. Okay. So basically, in this use case, I am keeping the file within the S3 only and reading it from S3 and sending it back to S3 on another directory. You can choose any other source also, no issue, either Google Drive or if it from external CRM tool works totally. So in this, I'm keeping this file of 100 MB for the use case, because if the billing on S3 depends on not the memory but the operations. So the more you can put file up till 20 GB and you won't get the billing, but if you put a 1 MB file 100 times in and out, you will get the billing. So again, you need to make it publicly accessible to read it from an outside source. So make sure your ACL is set to read public access, or you can give it a separate share link with a expiry timeout. This will be this is the object URL. You can directly use it. It will straight up download the file. Okay, no issue. Yeah. So basically, we'll pass this URL via MuleSoft with API gateway into the Lambda function, and then that will be downloaded here. So in this, now by default, it will keep the file in the temp folder of the Lambda, and then we can check the file integrity and shred it according to the sizes we want. Uh, Here I'm using data panda, reading the file, getting the number of rows printed, how many number of rows exist, and then dividing it into a smaller chunk of how many rows I want, iterating it. And while creating every new file, I'm putting it into the S3. So here you can see upload file S3. uh, so to use any functions of S3 in Lambda, you need to get this library boot03. This is by default present in the Lambda, so you don't have to add any layer to access this package. It comes with default. And with this boot03 client S3, you can use any functions like read, put, upload, delete file in this. So so it will read the big file from S3 and then put it into smaller chunks and upload it part by part, uh, and then removing the file from the Lambda itself. This is optional for cleaning purpose, and you can return once it is process is complete with the file which has been processed. So this will be uh, the Lambda thing, which will process your file and then put it into S3. Now, if you come to the S3, this is the bucket which is in North Virginia region, US E1, and I'm putting so it will be putting into current folder. So in Lambda, in the function, if you see current output CSV with the number of rows which it has. Okay, now heading on to the any point part. So
Again, a question.
yes, any questions, anyone?
Yeah. So if our API gateway is like hosted on a different region and S3 is on a different region, so will it still be able to access it, or how it will work?
So both are even they are both on a different region. The one combining you are doing is through Lambda. So Lambda is accessing from different region. It will be accessible, no doubt. Also, you need to provide it while using it in MuleSoft which region it is. So once you configure your S3 configuration config file, there you specify which region it is hosted to access it.
Okay. So Lambda function is not region specific, right?
No, it's a global.
Okay.
Lambda is just a computerless service which will run a script uh, across within AWS only. So it connects any two services or more than that combined.
Okay.
Okay, let me just take you through. So if you go to Exchange, search for S3, you will see a connector called Amazon S3 connector, Glacier and other two, but when we will be going for Amazon S3 connector MuleSoft, provided by MuleSoft. Add it into your project. Once you add, you need to configure. Go to the configure element part, uh, create S3 configurations set. So here there are different ways of configuration. One which we will be using will be access key, secret key, and region. So here the access key and secret key which I'm providing is of the user which I'm using. So this is a account user which has access to the S3.
So it is IAM user or the root?
Yes, I am user. This is an I am user. So from root account, I have created an I am user. Let me show you this. So in this, I have attached policies whichever I want to use for S3 Lambda and gateway invocation with CloudWatch as well. So here you need to get the access key. So here's the access key and the secret key you will get once you create initially. I'll be providing those here, and the region on which I'm using the S3 on. So here the question, if it's on a different region, you need to provide that specific region of S3, or else your file won't be accessible if the region conflict occur. So this one is on US East 1. Let me cancel. I have already configured.
Yeah, hi Gagan. Sorry to interrupt you.
Yes.
Can you maximize the studio screen? I mean to say it's
Yes.
not really maximized.
Uh,
Yeah,
is it
thanks. Yeah,
okay?
great.
Once you're done with your configuration connectivity, then you can use the operations which S3 gives you: copy, create, list bucket, and delete objects as well. So in this, I'm basically running a scheduler which will be triggering it every 10 minutes just to check, get the files from the folder. If it finds any, it will list out. If it doesn't, it will just list an empty array. And on a manual side, I have created manual endpoints as well for it. So you can manually list, start your job, and then get the objects. So start job basically refers to the triggering part where you will trigger the S3 API gateway. So if you see here, let me maximize. I can't. Okay. So I'm passing the URL of API gateway on a route get data with the params of base URL of the bucket, the bigger file from S3 only, and this will be passed to API gateway, calling API gateway, and then pass on to the Lambda. Now Lambda will take the URL and then call it separately, and you will get the response from Lambda once the processing is completed as well. You can also provide it async response invocation with the API gateway. Suppose your let me run it and then we can have this. Okay. Either you can call it directly from Postman, the API gateway, or call it from your uh, internal endpoint of MuleSoft. Also, to check the logs for your Lambda, let me start. Okay. If you go to the monitor section, it will redirect you to the CloudWatch here, where you will have log groups depending on the deployment. So every time you change anything in Lambda, there will be a new deployment triggered, and then you will get a new set of log files. Let me do a fresh deployment. So logs will be fresh. Change deploy. I'll trigger this. I guess the bucket storage. I have created two separate endpoints. Okay. Uh, this will take a bit long. So suppose if your execution doesn't, if you don't want to wait for the response, you can set a async invocation with the S3, sorry, with the API gateway, and then it will give you the async response, and the processing will be happening in the background. Let me go to the logs. Yes, this is today's log. Yeah. So this is a response from the API gateway once the processing is complete. So file processed for the CSV. And if you see here, I have printed the event also from the Lambda so that you can see how the requests come once you trigger the gateway. So this will be our whole request event part. So here in the function, this event variable will contain this whole thing. So now from here you can pick the pieces which you want for your integration. So if you see, I am passing as a string query parameter the base URL part and the URL. You can pass headers or body too. So once that is done, it will be stored in this location, time data people, and then getting the total number of rows it has processed. Let me show you the CSV file as well. Uh, okay, now if we go to the part on the bucket, current, you will see it has shredded the CSV into multiple parts. Open. Can we open CSV? Save. So this is your data file. Now you can process it piece by piece from S3 in MuleSoft. So now you can see these are the chunks. If you go back to S3 here, list object. In list object, you need to provide the bucket name and then the prefix from where. So if you leave the prefix, then you need to uh, then it will list out the whole structure for your bucket only, other folders and everything. But if you specify properly which folder you need to get in, you can put it, and then it will give you the data from that folder. Let me showcase Postman. I have created a list manual endpoint which will have all the files here. Current input, all 10 files, 90001. Now you can either process it or move it how you like to process your normal flows.
Yeah, Gagan, sorry to interrupt.
Yes.
I'm still seeing the CloudWatch screen, not the post. Not sure it is for others also.
Cloud
Yes.
is
Hey Vikash, can you rejoin? I think it's like we can see different screens.
Okay.
probably a network issue from your end.
Uh,
Might, yeah, you can might refresh. Okay. So now you will get your files here, and then it will be in an array. So so now you can process it from one by one. So if you So there is a connector called get object as well, in which you need to provide the path and again the storage. So the path will be a complete path, removing the bucket name. Manual get object. Here basically you need to provide the path of this path. So you can skip the storage one. All it needs is from after your bucket, the full complete path to retrieve any file from S3. Give that. And you will get your response. I guess this is yes. Since it's an CSV, I have not mentioned the type. It's directly passing it to JSON. Okay. Moving forward. So this will be your the file. Now you can process it part by part according to your further use case. So let me break down. So for any doubts with the S3 connector and the objects, I take it as no. Moving on. So once these files are done, you can either process it or you can delete it. Every time you trigger the Lambda, make sure to check your logs, because that will help you if anything goes wrong. You can also set log alerts as well in AWS for your logs too. Okay, coming back to the slide. Yes, so overall that was the demo for reading a file, larger file with the Lambda, shredding it into S3, and then processing it from MuleSoft through S3 connector. Any questions or queries? Uh, okay. Okay. Okay, Robin, I'm done with the demo part. If you would like to carry forward from here on.
Sure,
Sure.
Gagan.
Yes.
So, anyone would like to? You can move to the next slide. Before we start trivia, do you have any questions? Anyone would like to ask from Gagan?
For for trivia, you will be sharing the screen, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Just waiting for
Yes.
anyone
Any?
would like to have any questions.
Okay.